Hi, welcome back to Speakerstack Music. This is Ant. This channel is dedicated to doing Ableton tutorial videos, production videos, videos to help you create your own music in Ableton, show you how to post your own demos online, on YouTube, etc. And I'm working through a series of videos where I'm showing you how I created a techno rock track in Ableton. This is video number 6. The previous 5 videos focused on the drum kit, and there'll be links to some of those videos at the end of this video and also in the playlist. But video 6 is going to move away from the percussion, the drum side of things, and start to look at the melody side of the song and the bass synth, the analog bass synth that we've got in the song on track 8, which we've set up as kind of the driving primary kind of trans bass within the song. So it's a trans bass sound that we're going for. So yeah, this is on track 8, and I'm going to show you piece by piece how I actually set this up. So the first thing, obviously, I went in and I created a MIDI channel by going down and clicking on Insert MIDI Track, and then I renamed it again by right-clicking and going Rename, and I labelled it Bass Synth from an admin point of view, so I know exactly what I'm working with. I then went and created an analog synthesizer, and this is essentially what we're going to use to tell Ableton what sound we want it to play these notes back as. And you do that by going into the instruments section in your Ableton presets and instruments, click on instruments, and then you'll see at the top you've got one called Analogue. So this is a really powerful analog synthesizer that you can use for a variety of different things. But for this particular track, this particular channel in this song, we want to create a trance bass sound. So if you click on the arrow, obviously you've got a number of different drop-down menus, all different kinds of sounds and preset sounds and samples that you can drop in. But we don't want to do that. We want to create our own bass sound. So we're going to ignore all of that, bring that back up, and we're just going to click on it and literally just drag it into Ableton, and it will come in. That's actually not done it right. It will drop in like this. And what you've got here essentially is an analog instrument that you can then use and create your own parameters within, create your own sound that you want for that particular channel within the song. So when you drop it in, it's not going to be set up in the way that you want it. You're going to have to go in and actually change some of the parameters on it to get the right sound that you want. So what the analog instrument is essentially it has 3 elements to it. It has an oscillator element, it has a filter element, and it has an amp element. And these are all in different sections here. You've got the oscillator section here, you've got the filter section here, and you've got the amp section here. And it's actually got two oscillators, 2 filters, and 2 amps. But for the purposes of what I want it to do for the bass sound, I've turned off the oscillator 2, the filter 2, and the amp 2. So we're going to just talk you through how I've set this up, because for each of these each of these sections, if you click on it, you can make changes in the image down here, which maps out exactly how you've applied the parameters. So you see, if I click on the oscillator, it does that. If I click on the filter, it does that. It shouldn't be. Let's just change that again. See if I can get that back to how it was. There we go. And if you click on the amp, it does that as well. So they're all drawing different shapes and patterns down here. You've got different parameters set up. And what these essentially are doing is telling Ableton how to process the notes that you've got, that you're playing it through, or through the analog instrument. So what we've done first of all is gone to the shape section, and you'll see there's a number of different shapes down here. You've got a sine wave. This is known as a sine wave. You've got a sawtooth wave. you've got a square wave, and you've got white noise here. We're going to ignore all of them apart from the sawtooth wave, which we've got here. And that's a really good shape for a trans bass sound. I've then lowered the octave on this section here to -1. I've left semi and detune as they are. I've put on, and then moving on to filter 1, I've got it on LP24. And I've altered the frequency and the resonance channels here. So I've got the frequency at around about 139 and the resonance at 33%. And then for the amp section, this is really kind of almost like a mini mixer, if you like. You've got a pan effect and a level effect, and I've just left the level effect as -18 decibels. The final section down here is the volume section, and I've just clicked on unison just to detune it slightly to about 10. So it gives it a kind of a detuned effect, which almost creates a bit of a chorus sound, which just thickens the sound. And that's the analog instrument setup. For each of these individual sections, you'll see that, as I say, if I click on that, it creates a certain shape down here. This is essentially telling Ableton how to apply attack, decay, sustain and release to each of the notes. And this section here relates to the attack. So I think we've got it on amp at the moment. Yeah, we've got it on the amp bit. So for each of these, you can actually mess around with the parameters and the shape. So for the amp section, you'll see that the attack is quick. It's at 5 milliseconds. But if I was to drag that across, you'll see that it actually changes the parameter in the attack section. And you can actually have a more gradual sustained attack. But I want, because this is a bass sound, we want it to punch through. So I've got the attack at 5 milliseconds. Then this section here is the decay. And again, if you see, if I move that across, you'll see that the decay is shifting. And that is essentially the amount of time it takes the note to fade away. And I'm just going to undo the changes there. And I've got that set at around about 600 milliseconds. If you then move this up and down, you can alter the sustain. You'll see that's going up and down on the note. And that's the third parameter that you can change on it. And as you can see, I've got that set at roughly around about 0.46, maybe a little bit less. And then finally, the release is at 500 milliseconds, and that's this section down here. So you can alter that. Let's just put that back to 500. Let's just undo the changes. So that's the amp bit, but you can also do it for the filter bit as well. So again, if I click on that, you'll see that we've got a slightly different setup. Again, I've got the attack at 5 milliseconds. The decay is at about 1.5. Sustain is at about 0.3 seconds. And the release is 126 milliseconds. So I don't want it. I don't want too much sustain or release on this because it's a bass note, bass synth, so it needs to be quite punchy. So I'm just going to stop talking for a second and show you how that sounds in the track. I'll just play a particular section here. So you could probably hear there in the sound that as I was messing around with the decay and sustain here by moving this left and right and up and down, you can actually alter the sound quite significantly just to fine tune it to get the kind of sound that you're looking for. So I really recommend have a play around with this. It's fantastic. It's really versatile. You've just got these three parameters: the oscillator, the filter, and the amp on this particular instrument. But you can also apply LFO effects, which we've got here. You can also do more of a vibration and glide effect, which kind of provides a kind of a smoother transition between the notes. So there's lots of different ways that you can use this for lots of different synthesizer sounds that you're looking for, such as pads or trans sequencers. But as I said, this is going to be a bass, an analog bass sound, almost like for a trans kind of track. So I don't want to mess around too much with these other sections on this bit. And again, you can also mess around with the frequency and the resonance if you really want to as well. I'll just show you again the kind of effect that has. You can have a great time just messing around with the frequency and the resonance, depending on what effect you want to achieve. And actually, with the frequency and the resonance, that's really in the filtering of the sound, where you can kind of apply those kind of a phasing effects that you want when on the filter, where it kind of moves through the frequencies or moves through the resonance on the track and actually filters itself in the sound. You wouldn't really want to do it on a bass synth, because again, you want something that's quite concrete and firm and fixed in terms of the sound, because it's in those lower frequencies, so you don't want to create a lot of stereo imaging and that kind of thing. But if you're creating other types of synthesizer sounds, then you can have a great time playing around with the frequency and the resonance. And if you click on the automation button up here, and then if you drop down to the bass synth and then just go on to the frequency bit, or you can draw in, those kind of changes that you want to create on the frequency, or record it and move the dial around and actually capture those changes live, according to how you're feeling your way through the song. Great stuff. So that's everything for the analog instrument. On top of that, I've also got an EQ8. And again, this is just to make sure that the positioning of the bass synth is in the lower frequencies and it's boosting the decibels and the sound in those lower frequencies. So again, I've applied a high pass, low cut filter that's coming in at about 1020 hertz around there. I've boosted it at around 80 hertz up to about 6 decibels, so it really punches through. And it has to really complement the kick on that side of things. So if we just remind ourselves of where we've got the kick, so that's kind of hovering at the loudest point at around 100 hertz. So really what we want is the bass coming up just underpinning it, really, so it's not clashing in that kind of same frequency range. So this is more of the space that we are placing the most of the energy and the volume of the bass synth in. I've then really lowered the decibels at around about 200-300 hertz using a Bell EQ here, just to take a lot of the energy out of that middle section, because we're going to have a lot of other instrumentation going on in this bit, so we don't want the bass interfering and overwhelming that section of the music. And then again, just capturing some of those upper frequency ranges up to about 8,000 hertz, just to capture some of that. So that's the EQ. I've also then put a Serum effects on, just to give it some stereo imaging. So this is something that comes with the third-party plugin Serum, and I've put a hyperdimension effect on, which I've got some soft touch stereo imaging going on that. This isn't integral to the kind of sound that you want to create. So if you don't have Serum, then that's fine, it's not integral to it. And then finally, a utility. I've added a utility again just to give it some stereo width here in this section. I've also put it in bass mono, so that again, this just means that all the bass sounds under about 120 around here are going to be in mono, not stereo. We don't want any stereo phasing for the bass synth, so that's why I've done that. And I've increased the gain, just boosting it through there in terms of the volume levels for the bass synthesizer. In terms of the pattern for the bass, there's really 3 different sections. So the first section is really a sequence of shorter and longer notes in a kind of a staccato fashion. I'll just play you that again. So that kind of repeats around and around. And then I think that's the same for that bit. And then the second section is just introducing. So the note's gonna, this is in the key of G, by the way. So all the bass notes start off in the key of G, but then we're moving from G to A sharp for this section, and this sounds like this. So you can hear the A sharp notes there at the end of every, what would it be, every second bar, is it? Something like that, just to introduce a bit of variety and tension. And then the third section is where we've kind of got the main synth idea coming in, moving between 4 different chords. And those chords are G, A sharp, C, and G sharp. And I've got the bass notes emulating the other synthesizer sounds, so it's kind of underpinning it and reinforcing the melody. So a lot of the melody is coming through on this track called the low synth, which is track 17, and I've got the bass emulating that same pattern. And then finally, just a build-up section here, which it moves from G to A sharp to C, and that sounds like this. And that's really just to create a bit of a break in the music before it drops into that final chorus and fades out and finishes the song. So that's the Analogue bass synth. As I said, I wanted to create something which is quite trancey. Hope that's been useful to you and of value. If it was of value and useful, please like the video. That would go a long way to getting the videos out to more people, pushing the channel out to more people. And maybe consider subscribing to the channel if you like this video and you kind of want to see and hear more of this kind of stuff. That would be brilliant. As I said, we're growing the channel and really wanting to try and get our music out to as many people as possible. So again, if you wanted to check out some of Speakerstack's music, there are links in the video description below, and also on the YouTube channel. If you flick through and go to that, you'll see that there are various demos and finished songs that have been posted as well, including a link to the finished version of this song, which is called Mechanical, and a video to go along with it. So all that remains is just to say thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next Speakerstack music video. Thank you.